I was with a New York tycoon for 3 years. The day he got engaged, I faked my death and disappeared, while pregnant. 5 years later, I ran into him again with my son in tow. Julian stared at me, the corners of his eyes turning red. Where's the kid's father? Dead. Good. Glad to hear it. That makes the kid mine now. I shifted uncomfortably, staring at Julian, who had appeared out of nowhere. We were in a poor, forgotten town on the outskirts of Miami. I didn't for a second think his showing up here was a coincidence. Julian tapped his fingers twice on the table. You've been dead for 5 years, and the kid is 4.5. Laura, tell me, who's his father? Actually, I cheated on you back then. Julian let out a bitter laugh. And who did you cheat on me with? He's dead. Good. Glad he's dead, Julian said, gulping down his coffee. Weren't you supposed to be dead, too? Died in a car crash, flew off a cliff, body never found. They even issued a death certificate. Julian ripped a thin chain from his neck and slammed it on the table. Is this fun for you, Laura? Do you have any idea I almost believed you were really dead? My gaze fell instinctively to the chain on the table. On it was the diamond ring he had given me all those years ago. My heart stirred, but before I could speak, Julian did. Come back with me. Julian was tall and long-legged, his 6'3" frame blocking all the light in front of me. He was out of patience. Or do you want to play hardball? That bastard. I knew when to fold. There was no winning a fight with him. I quickly packed a few things, and soon Mark and I were on our way back to New York with Julian. It was summer vacation anyway. I just treated it as a trip. It wasn't until the stretch limo entered the gated community that I snapped back to reality. Even after 5 years, I still knew the way to Julian's house by heart. Mommy. Mark had slept the whole way. Seeing his soft, sleepy face melted my heart. We're almost there, sweetie. We're going to stay at this uncle's house for a few days, and then we'll go back home soon, okay? Julian's voice was menacing. Where else do you think you're going? Home. This is your home, Julian insisted. I turned my head away and said nothing. But Mark kept marveling, Mommy, this place is so pretty. Of course it was pretty. This was Greenwich, where every square inch was worth a fortune. The flowers were in full bloom, and the garden was a riot of color. If you like it here, Mark, you can live here with Mommy. Mark replied with a touch of pride, I like it here, but I'll do whatever Mommy says. I'll go wherever Mommy goes. My heart swelled, and I shot Julian a proud look. He just turned to look out the window. A faint smile was hidden at the corner of his lips. Looking at the familiar building, I sighed inwardly. It's been a long time. It felt like a lifetime ago. When he opened the door, I realized the decor inside was exactly as I had left it. The warm-toned sofa cover, the candy-colored floor lamp, I had picked them all out. Even the matching his and hers mugs I'd bought were still on the coffee table. Only now, just the his mug was sitting out, all alone. The only difference was a new wall covered in toys. Just as he'd hoped, I heard Mark's gasp of wow. Julian smiled. Uncle will help you open them. I silently gritted my teeth. This man was a sly dog, always knowing how to win people over. Slipping into the pink slippers Julian had prepared for me, I shuffled over to the toy wall and said sarcastically, so eager to buy toys for someone else's son. Julian just hummed in agreement. Then, from out of nowhere, he produced a velvet box. I also buy necklaces for someone else's wife. I looked down. Damn it. It was the runway piece I had saved on Pinterest just a few days ago. Before I could react, Julian took Mark's hand and led him further inside. Uncle will show you your room. I clutched the velvet box and followed them, staring at the meticulously decorated kid's room. You even prepared such a nice room for someone else's son. Julian leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a slow smile spreading across his face as he drew out his words. That's right. And I'm also going to sleep in the same room as someone else's wife. It was that handsome face that had always made me lose my mind. My heart hammered in my chest. Remembering what he just said, I emphasized, Mark has always slept with me. He can't sleep without me. So, tonight, Mark and I will sleep together. Mark instinctively started to argue, Mommy, I'm a big boy. When have I ever? I shot him a sharp glare. Mark flinched and quickly changed his tune, ever not slept with Mommy. Good boy. You know what's good for you. Julian gave us the master bedroom. He slept in Mark's room. So many other rooms, and you choose to sleep in the kids' room. How childish. It is childish, he said, casually tossing a peeled shrimp into my bowl. Sleeping in Mark's room, I wake up and immediately remember I have a son. It makes me happy. I was about to deny it when I heard Mark ask in a small voice, Mommy, is Uncle really my daddy? The words caught in my throat. I had always told Mark that his father was very busy with work and didn't have time for us, but that he loved us very much. No matter what, Julian was his biological father. What if one day, when he was older, he wanted this father? I couldn't take that right away from him. I couldn't let my own anger make me keep insisting Julian wasn't his dad. Julian stared at me, his narrow, almond-shaped eyes filled with expectation. When I didn't answer, the light in them dimmed. Why the disappointment? He was the one who hinted that we couldn't make it. I never intended to make things difficult for him. The next day, Julian was gone. I was about to head out for a walk and scope out my chances of escape. But I was stopped by a smiling Mrs. Rosa. Miss Laura, you're really back. I thought Mr. Wilson was pulling my leg. And the little one is so big already. He looks just like Mr. Wilson when he was a boy. At noon, Mrs. Rosa made us lunch. Mark ate happily and gave her the highest praise. Mrs. Rosa, your cooking is so delicious, Mommy. It's as good as the food at my preschool cafeteria. My mouth twitched. Mrs. Rosa was a Cantonese master chef who charged thousands per hour. You'd better hope she didn't hear you say that. Back then, my stomach was a mess, and I ate more of Mrs. Rosa's cooking than anyone's, so Julian hired her full-time. She was only back on duty because I had returned. Julian didn't get home until late at night. After having a child, I became a very light sleeper. So when the bedroom door opened, I heard it immediately. Damn it. I forgot to lock the door. I held my breath and pretended to be asleep. I felt him tiptoe over to Mark's side of the bed for a moment, then moved to stand beside me. A long time passed, and he still hadn't left. Suddenly, Julian knelt down. His hot breath, laced with alcohol, came closer. He leaned in and pressed a kiss to my lips. Fury surged through me. I opened my eyes and raised a hand to strike him. But he caught my wrist in one swift motion. His dry palm intertwined with my fingers. As my eyes adjusted to the dark, he chuckled and kissed the corner of my mouth. Done pretending to be asleep? Don't wake up, Mark. As he spoke, he stole a few more kisses. I didn't dare struggle too hard, hissing through my teeth, You're drunk. You stink. Julian used to be so cool and aloof. He'd never just sit on the floor like this, holding my hand and rubbing it against his stubble. When are you going to tell Mark I'm his dad? You're not. You'd lie on your deathbed. You can put it off, but you can't hide it forever. Now I was truly angry. Aren't you afraid your wife will find out about this? I'm not married. You really disappeared completely, didn't you? You paid zero attention to me. I froze. But the day I left was the day of his fiancé's grandfather's birthday party. I corrected myself, your fiancé. I don't have a fiancé. How is that possible? You. Julian looked at me, his eyes filled with a shattered, deep affection. It was impossible to tell if he was drunk or sober. I only have you. The bed moved. But Julian didn't. I followed his gaze. And slowly turned around. A small figure, wrapped in his little blanket, was shuffling across the room. The air went still. Mark had noticed, too. He turned his head, saw Julian and me staring at him, and sighed in resignation. "Mommy, I think I'll go sleep in my room. I don't want to be part of your role play." Julian, still holding my hand, burst out laughing. His whole chest shook with it. We had been back for a week. The once empty house was now bustling. Mrs. Rosa was back, the familiar security guards were back, and several Filipino housekeepers had been hired. They spent their days gossiping. And all the gossip was about Julian. When I went to get some water, the housekeepers in the kitchen started chatting. "Mr. Wilson isn't engaged or married. He's been a perfect gentleman, no one by his side all these years, just focused on his career." That's right. Mr. Wilson is the ultimate eligible bachelor." When I went to water the plants, I heard a security guard's clipped voice. "Did you hear? A while back, some actress tried to hint she was involved with Mr. Wilson. A list celebrity, a national sweetheart. Guess what our Mr. Wilson did? What did he do? He issued 3 separate statements denying it and told her to stop dragging him into it. His face basically screamed, 'Get away from me.' Mr. Wilson is so loyal. Even with his wife and kid away, he kept himself in check. What a good man." Julian was very busy. But whenever he had free time, he stayed home with us. If I ignored him, he'd play with Mark. He helped Mark build Lego sets and showed him the stars. He bought a $1 million telescope without a second thought and could tell a story about every constellation. These were all things I could never give Mark. I only learned about Legos after I started dating Julian, toys for both kids and adults, and ridiculously expensive. And I knew nothing about astronomy. That was a hobby for the rich. The only lesson I ever learned growing up was, what's the point of a girl getting so much education? I thought I had given him the best I could, within the limits of my own world. But my world was so very small. I knew how hard it was to break through class barriers. And I knew even better how painful it was to accept that you were born ordinary. I actually had a decent amount of money, just not that much. Should Mark really stay with me and give up the incredible fortune, both material and intellectual, that was right in front of him? Julian was always watching me. Seeing my spirits sink, he nudged Mark, who was stargazing. "Mommy's in a bad mood, but she won't talk to me. Can you go cheer her up for me?" I was taken aback as Mark rushed over, pulling me down to his level. He planted a loud kiss on my cheek. Then he whispered in my ear, "That was from Daddy." My hand, holding his, froze. Julian, of course, didn't hear that. He just stood a short distance away, looking at Mark and me. As if we were his entire world. My mind was a mess. I got up in the middle of the night. I'm a novelist, and my buffer chapters were almost gone. If I didn't write, my readers would be after me. I put on my silver-rimmed glasses and sat at the bar, typing away. Julian came out, too. His tablet displayed a dense spreadsheet, and a matching pair of silver-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. Still up? I didn't want to talk to him, my fingers flying across the keyboard. "I'm busy." Busy with what? Nothing. Julian took a sip of water. He was determined to make conversation. "How do you support a child if you're not busy? You didn't even take a single credit card. I took your mother's card. And you never used it." It wasn't that I wouldn't use it, but I just didn't need that much money at the moment. If there was ever an emergency, I would have used it without a second thought. Julian didn't come closer to look, asking again, "Busy with what?" I ignored him. He chuckled. "Huh, not gonna tell me?" He opened his phone, switched to a dramatic narrator's voice, and enunciated each word, "Shining star, the CEO's feisty bride. The chase, the president's 99th runaway wife. Transmigrated into a reality show, the film queen slays. My fingers froze. My face turned beet red. Those were the embarrassing web novels I wrote. Julian. Furious and mortified, I leaped up to snatch his phone. Julian's eyes curved with laughter. I didn't get the phone, but I did fall right into his arms. Julian's arms wrapped around my waist, holding me tight, not letting me move. The faint scent of cedarwood cologne filled my nose, making it tingle. It wasn't that I hadn't missed this embrace. He held me. His hot breath fanned the skin behind my ear. I looked up at him, furious. Let me go. Julian raised an eyebrow. Don't be cute. I was livid. Are you going to let go or not? Give me a kiss and I will. Let go, let go. My antics made him laugh, his chest vibrating. You're so cute. I'm not letting go. I was about to cry from frustration. How can you be like this? He used to try to coax me before. But he always maintained a certain distance. Definitely not this shameless. They're well written. What are you shy about? Julian's deep voice rumbled. This one is the best. The Years with You. Hearing the relatively normal title, I stopped struggling. Julian asked softly, is it based on us? If you say yes, I'll tell you anything you want to know. The villa window was open. A summer breeze carried the fragrance of the garden's flowers. The scent pulled at my memories, and for a moment, I felt like I was back in a time long past. I met Julian 8 years ago. I was born in a small coastal county near Miami, where the main industry was drying seaweed. In a family that prized sons over daughters. Actually, my name wasn't Laura. My birth name was Sorrow. As in, the sorrow of my existence. My brother, born a year after me, was named Kevin. As in, to bring glory and honor to the family. I overheard the town gossips talking about the meaning of our names. Back then, I didn't understand why my own parents could hate me so much. Only later did I realize. Ignorance was the original sin. Girls in my town were branded as tools by their parents from birth, with names that meant things like bring a brother, hope for a boy, and longing for a son. From a young age, I felt my parents' disgust and favoritism. I never had new clothes, they were always my mom's old, worn-out things, altered to fit me. Patched over and over again. But my brother got new clothes every season. My parents worked in a factory, and their combined monthly income was less than $2,000. But they never hesitated to buy my brother sneakers that cost $300 or $400. I, on the other hand, wore sandals even in winter, my hands and feet covered in frostbite. My brother would gorge himself on fried chicken, his mouth greasy. I only had plain porridge and vegetables. If I got desperate with hunger and secretly tore off a piece of chicken skin, I'd be scolded for being shameless. They said a fat girl was unmarriageable, a waste of money to raise. At our small town's elementary school, few girls were expected to achieve much. They seemed to gradually accept their fate, believing there was no point in studying too hard. After all, they would get married when they came of age. Their lives were confined to this tiny patch of land, with no other possibilities. But some of us refused to give up. From a young age, I had only one goal. To climb. To get out. The world was vast, surely there had to be more to life than being sold off, married, and having children. Later, I stumbled upon a quote. What is the first step to becoming a novelist? To have a less than perfect family. In middle school, I read a few novels. That's when I got the idea to write a story of my own. I poured my family life, my experiences, and my dreams into a diary. I wanted to be a writer. Then, my diary was discovered by my teacher. After confiscating my diary, Mrs. Davis called me to her office. I was a little scared. The diary was filled with secrets I could never speak aloud and dreams that, at the time, seemed embarrassingly wild. My anxiety quickly dissolved under her gentle smile. She handed the notebook back to me. That was physics class. You shouldn't be doing other things during class. She paused, then smiled. I only read one page, but it's very good. You have a real talent. Promise me you'll write during reading period next time, okay? I was stunned, my head snapping up to meet her eyes. Mrs. Davis was about my mother's age, but the way she looked at me was completely different from my mother's usual gaze. When she looked at me, even the lines around her eyes were gentle. A warmth spread through my chest, and I nodded vigorously. I had always believed that if I just worked hard enough, I could gradually escape my situation. Until one day, I overheard my parents talking to our neighbor. The neighbor said, "Once she finishes 9th grade, you've done your duty as parents. A girl gets a bit of education so she can teach her own sons later. A girl is never really part of the family anyway. The right thing to do is get her into a factory to earn money and help out Kevin. She's old enough. Why is she still spending money instead of earning it? Who raises a daughter like that? Sorrow is a pretty girl, plenty of boys have their eye on her. You can ask for a high price, and that'll help pay for Kevin's future wife. Once she's married, she'll settle down, have a baby, serve her husband, and live a good life. Isn't that how life is? Then Kevin's wife will give you a big, healthy grandson, and you can just sit back and enjoy your golden years." Outside, there was happy laughter. It was the first time I had ever seen my mother smile so joyfully. She was captivated by the life the neighbor described. But standing behind the grimy, narrow window, I just felt a chill creep into my bones. So even with my good grades, my parents didn't want me to go to high school. I knew what happened to the girls who dropped out of school early. They married young, had children, and the stretch marks on their bellies became the stuff of my nightmares. If they were lucky, their husbands were hardworking. If not, the men would come home, flop onto the bed, and wait to be served. Some of these girls weren't even 20, a crying baby strapped to their back, their hands expertly working over pots and pans, while their husbands, annoyed at their slowness, would kick them from behind like a donkey while playing cards. Worse yet, if the first child was a daughter, they'd get pregnant again before they even recovered from childbirth, all to produce a son. And the daughter would likely be given a name related to brother, a casual and tragic label. When she grew up, she would just repeat her mother's life. I heard my parents' plans. But I was powerless. I could only pretend I didn't know and study like a maniac. I did my chores in silence, and I managed to save a little from my already meager living allowance, hoping to pay for my high school tuition. I can't even describe how much I envied Kevin. And how much I hated that he had the opportunity to study but chose to waste his time, glued to the family's only smartphone, engrossed in his games. After the middle school exit exams, I graduated first in my class and was accepted into the city's top high school. For the first time in my 15 years, I nervously took my acceptance letter and made a request to my family. Wearing a t-shirt that was too tight in the shoulders, I stood before my silent parents and said softly, "Dad, Mom, I want to keep studying." They sat on small stools, heads down, saying nothing. My dad was the first to react. He threw his hand-rolled cigarette on the ground. "Studying has made you wild. You think you can just keep studying because you want to? Where's the money for that?" I had expected this outcome, but I couldn't help feeling wronged. Tears welled in my eyes as I shouted, "What do you mean there's no money? There's money for Kevin's fried chicken, there's money for Kevin to go out and have fun, there's money for everything Kevin does. Why isn't there even money for me to study?" Kevin, who already weighed 200 pounds, was cursing at his game. Hearing my words, he slammed the book, propping up his hands. "You bitch, what's that supposed to mean? You can't stand to see me doing well, can you?" The book he casually used to prop up his hands while playing a game could have propped up my entire life. My dad was also panting with anger. "You damn girl. You useless thing who can't carry on the family name. How dare you compare yourself to Kevin? How can you possibly compare to him? If it weren't for Kevin, you'd be letting our family line die out, do you understand?" As he yelled, he tore up my acceptance letter. I tried to grab it but was thrown violently to the ground. My mom remained silent and went to the side to cook dinner. She had bought pork ribs earlier because Kevin wanted sweet and sour ribs. Kevin didn't move a muscle, but he was already the winner. He spat in my direction, and no one stopped him. In that moment, they extinguished my last flicker of hope. The scrapes from my fall were untreated, and they stung fiercely late into the night. I lay in bed crying, biting down hard on my wrist to keep from making a sound. The night was so dark. And the countryside nights were even darker, as if devoid of any light. Soon, the news that the top student had given up high school spread through the school. When people heard, they all just sighed. Well, she's a girl. What can you do, she's a girl. Girls just don't have big ambitions. If girls don't speak up, no one will ever know how they were suffocated. They'll just casually say, they just don't have big ambitions. A few days after the rumors started, Mrs. Davis found me. She had me sit down in her office and looked at me for a long moment before speaking. "Sorrow, I told you that you have a great talent, that you write beautiful stories. But, writing requires experience, it requires a rich life. On that page I read, you wrote that you want to be a writer someday. How can you be a writer if you don't continue your education?" The pent-up frustration burst forth. I sobbed, unable to speak. Sometimes, what hurts the most isn't the immediate pain or the reality of the situation. It's the fact that you once truly believed you could become the person you imagined yourself to be. It's not that I don't want to go to school, it's that I can't. My dad tore up my acceptance letter. He won't let me go. I broke down completely, tugging lightly at Mrs. Davis's sleeve. "Teacher, why can't I go to school? Is it just because I'm a girl? Can't girls study? Is there really only one path for girls?" Mrs. Davis's eyes softened, and she gave me a hug. I thought that hug was the end of it. I was even starting to think about how I could fight my way out if I was forced into a factory, forced to marry and have children. Could I even escape? But I never expected Mrs. Davis to come to my house. She held an envelope and placed it in front of my parents. "There's $10,000 in here." I froze. My parents froze, too. That was more than half a year's salary for them. With Kevin's constant spending, they couldn't save that much in years. After a moment, my mom stammered, "Teacher, what's this?" Mrs. Davis smiled and took my hand. Sorrow was first in her class. She brought honor to our school. This is a scholarship from the high school in the city, only the top student gets it. They said if a student like Sorrow can attend, all her tuition and fees will be waived. I had never heard of this. And I wasn't a naive child anymore. I understood almost instantly. The money was from Mrs. Davis. My dad glanced at the money, then at Mrs. Davis. "So, going to school can earn you money?" Mrs. Davis shook her head. "Not for most people. Only for the exceptionally bright ones. Once Sorrow gets to college, there will be more scholarships, financial aid, and if the family is struggling, she can apply for student loans that she can pay back after she graduates. None of this will cost the family any money. Sorrow is a promising student. A child like her will have a great future after college. I heard you're already trying to arrange a marriage for her. In a small town like this, how much of a dowry can you get? How much will Sorrow be able to earn in the future? Can't your family do that math?" Mrs. Davis's voice was gentle but firm as she stood in front of me. And all I could do was stare at the frayed seams of her clothes and cry silently. The memory of that day often replays in my mind. I remember my dad relenting. I remember my mom snatching the money, licking her finger to count each bill. I remember walking Mrs. Davis out later, and her pulling me aside at the door. Seeing no one was following, she secretly handed me a bank card. "What are you crying for?" "No crying. You just focus on your studies and move forward boldly. I discussed it with my family. We'll cover your expenses through college. Consider it a loan. You'll have to pay it back in the future, understand?" I wanted to study so badly. Clutching the bank card, I nodded through my tears. "I understand. Mrs. Davis smiled gently and patted my head. Ahead of me were specks of light. Behind me, an endless night. Standing on the line between light and shadow, I wailed. And I made a silent vow to never let her down. High school was even tougher. But the good thing was, I chose to live in the dorm. I didn't have to do housework or farm chores, didn't have to face those three faces, and could put all my energy into studying. On weekdays, I studied relentlessly. On holidays, I worked part-time jobs. Mrs. Davis would regularly deposit money into my account. When she saw how little I was spending, she would call and tell me not to be so frugal, that I should buy what I needed. I knew Mrs. Davis had a son in college and her husband was also a teacher. Teaching in a small town, their salaries weren't high. I was already immensely grateful just to be in high school. How could I bear to spend more of her money? High school wasn't just for kids from the town, there were many girls from the city. Their faces were full of innocence and energy. Only when I saw them did I realize that the saying "youth knows no sorrow" was real. While they were scheming about how to get out of wearing their school uniform pants, which stores had the cutest clothes, and which bubble tea was the best, I was busy trying to find ways to print out practice exams from big city schools. I gnawed on dry bread while I studied, wishing I could devour the books in front of me. When I was truly exhausted, would write down the wild thoughts in my head, one by one, in my diary. That was the sweet aftertaste in my bitter life, recording my hopes and dreams for the future. Those were 3 years of being an outcast. 3 years of not having friends, of being ostracized. 3 years of having fleeting teenage crushes, only to brutally suppress them. Studying was hard, but was it harder than life itself? I thought of that dim, oppressive home, of my room that was half the size of Kevin's, of him stuffing his face with snacks and cursing at his games. All those negative, terrifying things I didn't want to face also spurred me on, screaming at me to push forward. Telling me, don't look back. 3 years flew by. On the day I finished my final college entrance exam, I realized the leaves on the trees were green. A lush, vibrant green. The ordinary tree-lined streets of the high school were a beautiful sight I hadn't had the time to appreciate in 3 years. I stood in the setting sun, tears streaming down my face amidst a crowd I never fit into. Mrs. Davis stood at the east gate of the school, waving at me from a distance. I ran to her and gave her a huge hug. The exam results came out quickly. I scored a 688. A 688 in the humanities section, a score I had never dared to dream of. The first thing I did was share the good news with Mrs. Davis, sobbing uncontrollably. Meanwhile, Kevin, then a sophomore in high school, weighed over 220 pounds and spent his days lying in bed playing games. His bed sheets were grimy, and his clothes were stained with snack crumbs and grease that wouldn't wash out. He hadn't showered in who knows how many days, and when my mom tried to tend to him, he would just snap at her for being in the way. I couldn't understand why, despite everything, my brother was still their treasure. And no matter how hard I tried, they never saw me. I applied to a university in New York, just across the river from my hometown. People from the city and the village came to congratulate me. Local entrepreneurs, vying for media coverage, offered me scholarships named after their companies. All of that money went into my parents' pockets. They were overjoyed, bragging to everyone about how correct their decision to let me continue my education had been. I wasn't surprised at all. Before the semester started, Mrs. Davis took me out to dinner. She was as gentle as ever, constantly putting food on my plate. Seeing the silver strands in her hair made my heart ache. After hesitating for a long time, I whispered, "Mom." Mrs. Davis's hand paused. Under the light, she looked at me, her eyes clearly welling up. I repeated it, louder this time. "Mom." "Yes, my dear," she answered. My parents had heard from somewhere that my education had made me wild and that I wouldn't care for them in the future. They lectured me, demanding that I send them $10,000 every year once I started school. Otherwise, they would cause a scene and let all my classmates know what a heartless, ungrateful person I was. My brother smirked triumphantly from the side. I just answered coldly, "I know." It wasn't time yet. I wasn't strong enough yet. Sooner or later, I would break free from the cocoon of my family and become a butterfly. I was accepted into NYU's literature program. During my freshman year, I applied for student loans. That year, I buried myself in my studies and took on endless part-time jobs. To earn higher scholarships, I participated in any school activity that offered academic credit but didn't take up too much time. For example, the campus singing competition. I have a slightly husky voice, and I have a knack for singing. Especially Cantonese songs. In high school, my music teacher, seeing how withdrawn I was, once made me sing. He even joked that I was a young Janice Vidal. But after practicing for a long time in private, I realized something as the competition approached. At a university, especially a top-tier one, many competitions are not just competitions, they are a young person's first step into the social arena of society. Many distinguished alumni came to present awards, mostly high-level executives, children of officials, and the wealthy elite. The student contestants pulled out all the stops, dressing in their finest. It wasn't that I was vain, but at that time, I didn't even own a decent dress. To participate, I rented one. It was the cheapest dress in the rental shop and didn't fit quite right. The day of the competition was Christmas Eve. Malls and shops were decked out in Christmas decorations. There was even a huge Christmas tree in the academic building. Coming back to the backstage area, I had a whimsical thought. They say Santa Claus rides a sleigh. But I had never even seen snow. It was on this day that I first met Julian. I was the second to last to perform. I didn't choose a Cantonese song but went with Coldplay's Viva la Vida. I was listening to that song a lot during that time. The melody had a sense of freedom and ocean waves. During the introductions, my eyes were drawn to Julian almost immediately. He sat in the corner of the front row. Unlike the other older leaders and seniors, he was exceptionally handsome, with a cool, detached air about him. At the time, I only knew he was a distinguished and wealthy alumnus, nothing more. I just thought he was tall and lean, with features as if drawn from a painting, and an incredible presence. At first, everything went smoothly. I got the crowd going, and the dimmed lights provided the perfect stage for the flashlights on their phones. More and more people waved their little points of light, making it feel like I was in a galaxy of stars. But just as the song was about to end, the borrowed dress failed me. I clearly heard the sound of the zipper suddenly sliding open. I was mortified. In that instant, only one thought crossed my mind. I hope it's just the zipper and the dress isn't broken, or else I'll have to pay for it. But my stage training kicked in. A second later, I reacted, letting down my pinned-up hair to cover the disaster on my back. My long hair cascaded down, and the arc it made as it fell ignited a chorus of whistles from the audience. Panting slightly, I retreated backstage, desperate to fix the zipper, only to realize with dismay that it seemed to be truly broken. Outside, they were starting to tally the scores. I clearly didn't have time to change. Just as I was about to rearrange my hair to cover up again, I saw the cool, aloof man from the audience now standing at the door of my dressing room. My steps faltered. I didn't know how to address him. As I was about to speak, he took a long stride forward and draped his suit jacket over my shoulders. The scent of cedarwood mixed with a faint hint of tobacco. It was the first time I had been this close to a man. My face instantly flushed, and I instinctively tried to refuse. "Thank you, but..." Julian's voice was husky. "Wear it." I bit my lips slightly, untied the belt from the dress underneath, and used it to cinch the suit jacket at the waist. I then neatly rolled up the sleeves. It now looked like just a slightly oversized women's blazer. I smiled up at him. "Thanks." But after the event, he left. I knew his name and who he was, but that was useless. It only made me acutely aware that I had no way of contacting him. The scene from that night kept replaying in my mind. I wondered over and over how Julian had seen it. No one should have noticed. So I had the couture jacket dry cleaned and stored it in the back of my closet. I had no way to return it to its owner, so it would have to stay there for now. I read countless books, started seriously plotting a novel, and even gathered a small following of readers on a writing website. The income was small, but it was a huge encouragement. I began to plan. Maybe one day, I wouldn't have to work part-time jobs and could spend more time on what I loved. I had calculated the debt. For 3 years of high school, plus the initial money given to my parents and the college tuition Mrs. Davis insisted on giving me, I owed her nearly $40,000. In my first year, I paid back $10,000. Mrs. Davis, worried I was working too hard, gently told me not to rush. College life was precious, and she didn't want me to move so fast that I missed the scenery along the way. My parents, however, took the money with cold faces, acting as if I owed it to them. Even so, with each busy and fulfilling day, I felt like I was finally seeing a glimmer of light in my struggling life. But then, in the winter of my sophomore year, disaster struck. My brother Kevin, who had drained the family's savings to attend a private college, had taken out online loans to fund his gaming addiction. He owed a full $100,000. The collection agency blew up his contact list. They came to our house, making violent threats. For that month, the family's shame was the talk of the town. I got the call late one night, just after finishing my shift at the bubble tea shop where I worked. Even though New York winters weren't as harsh as up north, the moment I heard my mother's voice, a chill shot from my chest to my fingertips. "It's a disaster, a total disaster," the woman wailed on the other end. "Mom, I don't have any money. I give you $10,000 a year. That's every penny I can make squeezing in work. I have to live, I have to study." The wind blew tears from my eyes. To save money, I spend less than $7 a day. I was cut off. "We don't care. That teacher of yours said the government pays for college. So you went off to school and got a wild heart, is that it? You have money but don't want to give it to your family? No wonder they say girls are ungrateful wolves. Who knows what you're really thinking? Are you trying to kill us? Are you trying to kill your father and me?" The words I wanted to say died in my throat. How ridiculous. After all these years, had I still not learned? To still be so foolish as to hope they might pity me. "You just wait. If you don't give us the money, I'll have your brother expose you. Don't forget, your brother is very good with the internet now. And if your brother isn't enough, I'll go lie down at the entrance of your school. Let's see how you handle that shame. If you don't give us the money, we'll go ask that teacher of yours for it." No. My voice was sharp. But my mother had found my weak spot. "Then you'd better send us the money quickly." That was the busiest winter of my memory. I had originally scheduled my part-time jobs for the weekends. But now, with no other choice, I started skipping classes. I worked as a waitress in a high-end restaurant during the day and as a tutor at night. After tutoring, if it was still early, I would go sing at a bar. When I got back to the dorm, afraid of disturbing my roommates, I'd huddle under the covers and use my phone to write the next day's chapter for my novel. It was during this time that I met Julian again. He had a business meeting at the restaurant where I worked. My co-worker, Linda, took his order and then excitedly pulled me aside for a hushed conversation. It's my first time seeing Julian in person. I've only seen him in business magazines before. After our first encounter, I had looked up Julian's background. He was from a top-tier New York family, a dynasty with interests spanning healthcare, real estate, transportation, retail, logistics, and entertainment. His ancestors were pioneers of commerce, who had made significant contributions to the country during critical times. Julian's father's generation was known for its scandals. Julian was the third son but the only child of the principal wife, and he was heavily favored. I say principal wife because there were 6 other consorts below her. I'd been trying not to stare, afraid of being too obvious. Only when Linda looked did I allow my gaze to follow hers. His profile was sharp and handsome, the very picture of an elite professional. His skin was a healthy pale, and his custom suit was casually draped over the back of his chair. The cuffs of his shirt were immaculately rolled up, revealing lean, muscular forearms. On his wrist was a watch said to be worth several $1 million. Only later did I learn the brand was Audemars Piguet. He looked both relaxed and serious, a palpable distance between him and everyone else, as if shrouded in a fine mist. He was nothing like the typical trust fund kids you saw online. He wasn't fussy like you'd expect. It seemed he was in a hurry, and he devoured a plate of black truffle steak as if it were fast food. When he was leaving, he went to pay the bill. I brushed past him, but he didn't give me a second glance. It was just an ordinary, passing moment. I never imagined I'd see him again in less than half a day. During the day, I was in a crisp white shirt and tasteful makeup, working at a fancy restaurant. By night, I was in a leather jacket and smoky eyeliner, singing on a bar stage. I sang the first set. After midnight, this stage would feature pole dancers. The bar's lighting was dim and seductive, designed to make people drunk and amorous. Julian sat at the central booth, his features sharp and deep. His narrow, almond-shaped eyes were framed by long lashes, his gaze dark and distant. Our eyes met a few times. He held an unlit, slim cigarette between his lips. I recognized the person sitting next to him, the same man he had been meeting with earlier that day. The others at the table also looked distinguished, clearly wealthy and influential. That night, I sang songs by a soulful artist. My voice, with its smoky quality, was well suited for them. But for the last song, for reasons I couldn't explain, I sang Viva la Vida. I noticed Julian suddenly look up, his eyes fixed on me. That night, he didn't invite me to his table. But he did buy me a drink. For a while after that, he came every day. And every day, he bought me a drink. As the night wore on, the place heated up. The city's nightlife was just beginning. After taking off my makeup, I was in the back when Sasha, the bar's co-owner, handed me a slip of paper. It had an address written on it. With a red lipstick smile and a cigarette between her fingers, she looked at me and said calmly, "Mr. Wilson wants to see you." 20,000. I hadn't been singing there for just a day. I knew what she meant. The $20,000 left me stunned and a little ashamed. After all, I had only wanted him to remember me, for reasons I hadn't even figured out myself. It was definitely not to start this kind of relationship. I sighed, feeling I'd made a mistake. "Thanks, but Sasha, I'll pass." Sasha raised an eyebrow, unsurprised. "It's fine, Laura, don't worry about it. His crowd, they get it. They don't force anyone." After starting college, I went by Laura. Mrs. Davis had suggested it. She said the name came from the Greek word for a green shoot, symbolizing new growth and light. She hoped my future would be bright and beautiful. The night was as dark as ink. Sasha spoke again. "Julian himself isn't a player, and he's handsome. You wouldn't be losing out. What he can give you casually might be more than you could ever earn in a lifetime of hard work. Life is a mix of effort and luck. The world is full of unspoken rules. Everyone pretends to look down on them, but when the opportunity lands in their own hands, how many can stay so noble? This could be your luck. Are you sure you want to pass?" Sasha had been on her own since she was 15. Now she was 34. She had clawed her way up for 20 years and had friends from all walks of life. I had heard many of her stories and knew her words weren't without reason. But still. "I'll pass." Back then, I knew one thing for sure. Every gift from fate comes with a price tag attached. So I smiled and replied, "Sasha, even if some things come my way, I might not be able to handle them." Sasha gave me a long, deep look, her red lips parting. She finished her cigarette and said no more. I thought that after my refusal, that would be the end of it. But just then, Mrs. Davis got sick. Lung cancer. I was rushing from the restaurant to my tutoring student's house when I got the call from Mark. He was Mrs. Davis's son. A few years older than me, he had just graduated and entered the workforce. Over the summer, I'd heard Mrs. Davis say he'd gotten a stable job at the city hall. Her eyes had been full of relief. Years of hope had finally paid off. With me in a good university and Mark with a job, she could finally look forward to a peaceful retirement. But now, she was sick. Mark's voice was strained. When my mom decided to help you back then, our whole family supported it. But now she's sick. I don't have much savings, and my dad's not well either. He has high blood pressure and needs medication constantly. I'm calling because I have a difficult request. The money my mom lent you, could you pay it back? It's not urgent, I can hold on for a bit, I just wanted to let you know. His voice grew quieter. He ended with a bitter laugh. Laura, I didn't have the face to ask. My mom told me not to. But we're at a dead end. My dad is planning to sell the house. It felt like a hard slap across my face, stinging and hot. My lips trembled, and I felt a surge of heat in my eyes. But the words that came out were chillingly calm. Is Mrs. Davis okay? She's stable for now. She might need to go to the state capitol for further treatment. How much do you need? His voice was pained. Insurance will cover some, but we have to pay up front. The surgery costs are manageable, but the follow-up treatments. We're trying to figure it out. On your end. Okay, I said, my voice soft and reassuring. Don't worry. I'll figure something out. I didn't hear the rest of what he said. That night, I went to the bar to sing as usual. Julian, who had been gone for over 2 weeks, was there again. And once again, I sang Viva la Vida. Before, it was without reason. This time, it was with purpose. Hearing the melody, Julian stopped talking to his friends, his gaze turning dark and unreadable as he looked at me on stage. After my set, the bar was buzzing, far more lively than it should be at midnight. For the first time, I didn't have time to take off my makeup. I grabbed the suit jacket from my locker and rushed out. Julian was no longer at his table. He couldn't have gone far. I didn't hesitate, pushing my way through the crowd toward the exit. It was a cold winter night, but sweat beaded on my forehead. Finally, under a streetlight outside the bar, I saw Julian on the phone. He held an unlit cigarette, his features sharp and cold, but the warm, yellow streetlight made him seem less untouchable. I stopped, standing a short distance away, in his peripheral vision. Julian hung up the phone, his eyes instinctively finding me. The hand about to light his cigarette paused. I took a deep breath, walked forward, and gathered my courage. Mr. Wilson, your jacket. I'm returning it. He glanced at the jacket, then at me with renewed interest. His voice was low and magnetic as he asked a question we both understood. Changed your mind? My heart was in turmoil, but there was no turning back. The next moment, he took the jacket and draped it over my shoulders once more. The jacket that had sat in my closet for so long, its owner scent long faded. But now, it seemed to carry that faint, masculine fragrance from the first time. Julian's voice held a hint of a smile. Didn't even have time to put on a coat. What's the rush? I haven't even bought you a drink yet. It's not like I'm going anywhere. I got into Julian's Maybach. It was midnight, the night as black as ink. Our destination was the top floor of a luxury hotel. A hotel that cost thousands a night. Even the elevator was glittering with gold, so bright I had nowhere to hide. The top floor was a circular design with only 2 suites, each occupying half the space. The bathroom was perfectly designed with separate wet and dry areas. When I came out of the shower, there was no steamy, ambiguous fog. Julian had opened a bottle of red wine. He was dressed in a casual black silk shirt and trousers, and he held out a hand to me. I obediently went to him. The carpet was so soft it felt like a dream. I was naked under the bathrobe. Julian was 26 that year. He pulled me onto his lap. His arousal was obvious. I didn't dare move. Julian was still smiling, his voice low and unhurried as he got straight to the point. Be with me? It just so happened that I didn't know how to write about rich people. I could just consider this research for the future. I took a deep breath. Okay. It's fine. This is just a temporary detour. The bed was crisp and dry, the room filled with the scent of expensive aromatherapy. Soon, that clean scent was tainted by something else. Once, Julian gave me a check for $50,000. My body aching, I went to the bank. I transferred $1,000 to my mom and $10,000 to Mrs. Davis. Giving money to my family required a delicate balance. Enough to solve their immediate crisis, but also to show them that the money didn't come easily. Mark was shocked and called me immediately. I lied and told him there was a program in New York and that I had taken out a loan. I walked for a long time, ignoring my mom's calls. I told them I would figure out a way to get the rest of the money. The pigeons in Midtown had disappeared after the temperature dropped. For the first time, I splurged on a taxi to the Grand Cathedral. A towering 250-foot statue of Mercy looked down with compassion, surveying the world below. Her eyes were half closed, 2 parts observing the world, 8 parts observing the self. The world was bustling, a sea of people. For the first time in my life, a life that had always been so goal-oriented, I felt empty and lost. In the beginning, Julian treated me like he was keeping a pet. We saw each other frequently, 2 or 3 times a week. He loved buying me clothes and bags, dressing me up the way he liked before taking me out to meet people. I didn't know many luxury brands, just a few I'd picked up from my part-time jobs. I knew some bags could cost hundreds of thousands, even millions, and were still impossible to get in wealthy circles, which astounded me. He enjoyed watching my naive surprise. It was the same in bed. The sheets would be damp, and I found I really liked making love with him. I never thought that derailing could be so addictive. He would work me into a tearful mess. Turn off the lights. But Julian's voice would be raspy as he'd laugh softly in my ear. You're beautiful, Laura. He was the beautiful one. In a daze, I would look at the man before me. His face, needless to say, was the one all the girls in New York's elite circles dreamed of marrying. And I got to see his body, toned from years of working out, with beautifully distributed muscles, unlike my own thin, malnourished paleness. My hands were still covered in the faint scars of frostbite and calluses. Looking back, I always felt like I was the one who got the better end of the deal. I wasn't obsessed with luxury goods and understood they were beyond my means. I just knew they were expensive and never dared to wear them to school. Luckily, I wasn't very social to begin with and was often working. I always changed back into my own clothes before leaving Julian's place. But there were always exceptions. One time, Julian drove me. He parked a little distance from the school as I'd asked, and I couldn't very well change clothes right in front of him. He never admitted it or denied it, but now he was being coy. Am I that embarrassing to be seen with? No. Then give me a kiss before you go. We had done far more intimate things, but that sentence made my face burn. I quickly leaned in to give him what he wanted and hurried out of the car amidst his laughter. It was still early when I got to class. The first period after lunch always made everyone sluggish and drowsy. My roommate, Mandy, saw me and was instantly wide awake. She nudged Jessica, the rich girl next to her, and her eyes scanned me up and down like an X-ray. Is that real? The new Mio-Mio? I played dumb. What's Mio-Mio? Mandy stared for a moment longer, then clicked her tongue in annoyance, her expression reverting to its usual disdain. Figured you couldn't afford it anyway. Whatever, but where'd you get this? It's a pretty good knockoff. I didn't reply, just looked up and met Jessica's meaningful gaze. After class, I went back to the dorm to get some materials. Only Jessica was there. She was wearing a face mask and had somehow appeared behind me. The person last night, that was you, right? I froze. Getting out of a black Maybach, going into the top floor suite at the Imperial, the elevator Julian took you to is a VIP-only lift. It only goes to the 88th floor. I continued gathering my things, my voice soft. You're mistaken. Jessica snorted. Whether I'm mistaken or not, you know the truth. Don't think you can climb that ladder. A guy from a family like his is just playing with you. She turned and sat down, blasting her TV show. I hugged my materials and sighed silently. I was good-looking, consistently in the top 3 of my class, and had even received the largest scholarship last year. I also frequently participated in activities for extra credit. So, in the eyes of the freshmen, I had somehow become a campus celebrity. Jessica was pretty, came from a good family, but her grades were average. Because we were in the same dorm, we were often subject to others' intentional or unintentional comparisons. My background and my writer's habit of observing people made me sensitive to the hostility Jessica had always directed at me. Before, her hostility would dissipate when she saw me in my old clothes, working hard at my part-time jobs. But this time, I sensed something was off about Jessica's mood. I didn't think much of it, though. But within 2 days, a post exploded on the campus online forum. The post claimed that a certain overachieving student in the literature department, last name starting with R, who was always working part-time, was being kept by a sugar daddy. It included several secretly taken photos of me. My face wasn't clear, but my silhouette was obvious, and there was a careful comparison of the clothes I was wearing that day. The comments were not kind. They say it's hard for the poor to succeed. So much for her inspirational story. In the end, she couldn't resist temptation. Can she not tarnish the reputation of women? I'm so done. I noticed her a while ago, guess I was too late, bro, when the sugar daddy dumps her, hit me up. I'll pay, I just wanna try. Dude above, don't be so gross. You're a student at a top university. The one selling herself is the gross one. Is he some fat old slob? How can she even stomach it? At first, I didn't pay it any mind. But it just got worse. It got so bad that when I walked into a classroom, all conversation would stop. I started to feel anxious. My sense of shame wasn't as strong as it was in middle school. But the heavy feeling in my heart was impossible to ignore. I had worked so hard to escape that impoverished little town, to walk into the bright halls of a university. It felt like I had brought shame upon my own life. I wanted to tell my academic advisor about it, but I realized I had no grounds to stand on. Wasn't what the post said true? Instead, she was the one who came to talk to me. Laura, I know your family situation. You have excellent grades, and you work very hard. In this day and age, I can't feed you the poison pill that hard work guarantees success, but you need to consider the impact on the school's reputation. I fought back tears. I wasn't so shameless as to enjoy the benefits and then cry about my misfortune. But I never expected Julian to find out. By then, the post had been deleted. But screenshots were still circulating, their popularity only growing. He noticed because even though his photo wasn't in the post, one of the cars belonged to his family. The rumor that Julian was keeping an NYU student spread in a small circle and was picked up by his company's public relations monitoring team. He pinched the flesh at my waist, his tone casual. Is this why you've been in a bad mood? No. He sneered. I thought it was something serious. His words were light, but they made me inexplicably sad. Within a week, Julian showed up at my school. His family's company sponsored a scholarship every year, and this time, Julian himself came to the award ceremony. Backstage, he stood across from my advisor, with a few other students nearby. Jessica was the event host, so she was there too. She wore a couture evening gown, her eyes full of admiration as she looked at Julian. But the next second, the smile on her face vanished. After speaking with the associate dean, Julian beckoned to me from a distance. Laura, come here. I hesitated for a moment but went over. Julian took my hand and smiled. Dean Liu, Laura is my girlfriend. Your school's forum described our relationship as me keeping her. Isn't that a bit harsh? She won't pursue it, but I can't stand by and watch. There are still some undelete posts. If the university doesn't handle it, I'll have my family's lawyers resolve the issue. I froze, looking at him in disbelief. But all I saw was the side of his face, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was winter again. The campus lights were bright, and the leaves that hadn't yet fallen were rustled by the cold wind, looking desolate. Students bustled all around us. Julian had driven himself. Cars weren't allowed on campus, so he parked just outside the boundary. He took my hand and tucked it into his coat pocket, walking slowly toward the car. The sweet, creamy scent of a dessert shop that hadn't yet closed wafted over. I looked at the decorations and suddenly realized. It was almost Christmas Eve again. Julian stopped, turning me to face him. He took my other hand, his voice puzzled. "Why are your hands so cold?" The streetlight cast his silhouette, his eyes lowered. The way he warmed my hands felt so natural, like any other ordinary couple on campus. But he was Julian. The sight of it made my eyes well up. In my entire life, no one had ever asked me that. "Are you cold? Why are your hands so cold?" 6 months later, I moved into Julian's mansion. The trees were budding, and the exclusive community was filled with hydrangea bushes. When the wind blew, they rippled gently. The reason I moved in was simple. I had been malnourished as a child, and later, between classes and part-time jobs, I never ate properly and developed a severe stomach condition. When I was busy, I could ignore it. But now that I was with Julian and living a better life, my body had become more delicate. One night, at a hotel with Julian, my stomach suddenly started to hurt. Julian was a light sleeper and quickly noticed my restlessness. He pulled me into his arms and realized I was covered in a cold sweat. He switched on the small bedside lamp, his voice betraying no emotion. "Laura, get up." I struggled to open my eyes and saw his darkened face. There was no stomach medicine in the hotel. He sent someone to buy some and had the kitchen make me some noodles. The hotel had an open-plan kitchen and dining area. Julian stood with his arms crossed, watching me coldly as I ate a bowl of noodles. For some reason, I felt a little guilty and sensed his displeasure. Putting the bowl in the sink, I poked his arm. "Julian." Julian ignored me. I poked him again, calling out, "Julian." Julian huffed. I was out of ideas, so I just sat down on his lap. Even sitting, he was still much taller than me. He looked down at me, his skin as flawless as fine porcelain. I looked at him pleadingly and shook his arm. I rarely acted cute, and I was clumsy at it. But it seemed to work on him. He sighed in resignation. "So you do remember I exist? Why don't you think of me when you're not feeling well?" "It's not that I didn't think of you," I said. "I was just afraid of waking you. You're so busy during the day." Julian looked at me for a moment and then made a decision. "This is too much trouble. Next time, come to my place. We have everything there, including a family doctor." "Do you get stomach pains often?" I nodded silently. "All right, I'm interviewing housekeepers right now. You can help me taste their cooking and pick the best one. Get yourself healthy. Stomach problems are no small thing. Don't just think you're young and it doesn't matter. You're nagging." My comment made Julian laugh in exasperation. This is the first time anyone's ever told me I talk too much. And so, I moved into Julian's house. Mrs. Rosa was hired. Julian gave me an ultimatum: eat on time, and if I didn't have class, I had to be there. This move stunned many of his friends. After all, Julian had never brought anyone home, let alone a college student from an impoverished background. His house felt like a private sanctuary. I felt out of place, but also free. The frostbite scars and calluses on my hands gradually faded, but my hands remained rough, looking especially so under the light. I developed a habit of using hand cream. He couldn't stand the thought of his woman working as a waitress, let alone singing in a bar, so I quit those jobs. Waitressing and singing were just meaningless labor to make money anyway. This freed up more time for me to write my novels and read books I had long wanted to read. It felt like I finally had time to do what I wanted, even if this leisure wasn't earned honorably. And through this, I got a closer look at Julian's life. I began to understand him. He had published papers in SCI journals in college and later went abroad to get an MBA. He was a master of finance and management. He could play a little piano, a little violin, and could dance a little. He knew a little about music, a little about film, and if you asked about theater or musicals, he knew a little about those too. I didn't know how many other things he knew, I just saw that his path in life was simple and clear. Pure elite education. I had known he was the general manager at his family's company. But I had only just learned that he managed a product line with thousands of employees with impeccable order, a testament to his ability. I couldn't help him with anything, and he didn't need my help. One time he got drunk and curled up on the sofa like a lazy cat, looking unusually vulnerable. I made him some porridge the way Mrs. Rosa had shown me, feeling a bit bolder. "Why did you bring me home?" Julian's answer was both dismissive and sincere. "Lust at first sight. You caught my eye, I was curious, and you seemed low maintenance. Don't you know that lust can be a man's downfall? How many men have been ruined by the person in their bed? How do you know I won't ruin you? You don't seem smart enough for that. You just want a quiet life." I told him to get up and have some porridge. He traced the rim of the porcelain bowl, smiling as he looked at my bowl. "How come your porridge is different from mine?" "Mine had shrimp in it." I sighed. I was tired and forgot. I was halfway through making it when I remembered you're allergic to shellfish. The shrimp was already in, so I made another batch. Julian's eyes were bright. The main lights were off, with only a small lamp illuminating our corner. Afraid the white light would be too jarring, he had adjusted it to a warm, dim yellow. "How long have we been together?" I didn't know why Julian was suddenly asking this. I answered, "A little over 6 months." Julian took a sip of porridge, his voice, cleared by the alcohol, becoming a bit sharper. "My mother has known me for 27 years, and she doesn't remember I'm allergic to shellfish." A rare flicker of exhaustion crossed his face. For once, we talked about something sensible. "Are you very tired?" He smiled. "Can't be helped. Everyone's tired. You work hard, too." "I have no choice." "What do you want to do in the future, Laura?" "I want to be a novelist." I thought he would laugh. But instead, he reached out his hand. "Come here, let me hold you." Julian pulled me into his arms and kneaded the back of my neck. "Then remember to set aside 5,200 copies of your first print run for me. Give me a chance to show my support." I always thought he was surrounded by girls, but it turned out I was the only one. He looked surprised when I brought it up. "Is it bad that it's just you? I told you before, you're my girlfriend." My heart skipped a beat, and my mind, against my will, began to entertain thoughts it shouldn't. He put his cup down on the table, the reflection in his glasses filled with the dense numbers on his laptop screen. His voice was calm, as if stating a simple fact. "I'm not that into this stuff anyway. It's good to have one person you get along with. Just because I have money and you don't have to think I'm keeping you. It's normal for me to spend more since I have more. There's nothing wrong with admitting you're my girlfriend. Why degrade it to being a kept woman? Stop reading so much trash." He paused, adding with precision, "Unless you're writing that kind of novel, then it's different. You have to understand the market." I couldn't help but laugh. When we had free time, Julian loved to take me skydiving, bungee jumping, and horseback riding. After each extreme sport, he would always come over and take my hand. "You're so brave. I didn't think you'd like these kinds of sports." "I love them. Of course I do." My mind was always overthinking, spinning constantly. Extreme sports gave me a moment of blankness. That momentary emptiness where I didn't have to think about anything was incredibly precious. So when he slipped the ring on my finger after a skydive, my mind was still in that blank state. I looked up sharply. "You?" Julian looked at me for a long moment before finally explaining, "I thought it looked nice, so I bought it. It doesn't mean anything else. Wear it if you like it. If you don't return it to me." A tightness formed in my chest. I said nothing. So, I wore it when I was with Julian and took it off when I wasn't. One time, I forgot to wear it when I saw him, and he stared at my hand for a long time. That day, as it happened, he took me to a gathering with his friends. Julian's circle, when they got together, would just play cards, chat, and play board games. I was pushed onto the card table, and the better my luck got, the more nervous I became. Julian just laughed, a cigarette dangling from his lips as he leaned over my shoulder to mess with me. "What are you afraid of?" "Afraid of losing?" "Don't be afraid, Laura. Life is long. You have to be able to afford to lose before you can afford to win." As he spoke, the person across from us, unable to stand the sappiness, played a card. I laughed, and Julian raised an eyebrow. "Thank you, for feeding my little one a winning card." He squeezed my middle finger, where the ring usually was but was now bare, and smiled around his cigarette. "You need to build up your courage." That night, I went with Julian to the bar where I used to sing to discuss some business. Sasha saw me and laughed, a cigarette held between her lips. "It hasn't been that long, but you're glowing." Was I glowing? I instinctively looked at my reflection in the mirror across the bar. And I was startled. I almost didn't recognize the girl in the mirror. Her face was no longer malnourished, no longer needing makeup to hide her hollow cheeks. Instead, she looked radiant, her almond eyes sparkling with life. Sasha, in a sleek black dress, blew a puff of smoke and sighed. "Youth is a wonderful thing." She paused and looked at me again. Only then did I notice that she seemed much more worn out. "But you need to keep your head clear. Feelings are the most fleeting things, especially with a family like his. Take what you can get, and don't think too much." Her words felt like a piece of ice placed in my hand, instantly sobering me up. At first, I had never thought too much. I had locked away all those unrealistic fantasies behind a door in my heart. But Julian was just too good. A man like him. How could I not think too much? The night was dark. The bedroom had been fitted with heavy blackout curtains at some point. Julian kissed me over and over, the sheets growing damp. I reached out and touched his face. Julian, not understanding, caught my right hand and kissed my wrist. At that moment, I turned my head and saw the moonlight peeking through a gap in the curtains. And I thought, I've been with Julian for almost 2 years. The year I graduated, Julian came to take pictures with me. As the shutter clicked, he was looking at me. Jessica saw us from a distance and hesitated for a long time before coming over. "I can't believe he's been with you this long. I was the one who made that post, I'm sorry. The dynamics between people are strange." Before graduation, it didn't feel like a big deal. But graduation was like a switch. After that point, everyone became kinder. Julian turned 30. The leaves turned yellow and fell. A gust of wind made you shiver. He became busier and busier. Before, we would see each other 2 or 3 times a week. But lately, a whole month had passed, and I had only seen him once. Graduation also brought questions from my family. For 4 whole years, I hadn't gone home. Even when I went back to my hometown, it was to visit Mrs. Davis, and then I'd leave quickly. Her surgery was successful, but her body had taken a toll. Mrs. Davis retired early. Lying in bed, she held my hand. "Laura is doing so well now." I held back my tears. Mark and I had an unspoken agreement not to mention the $10,000. But as I was leaving, he ran out to see me off. The man looked worn beyond his years. He glanced at my expensive clothes, sighed, and seemed to want to say something but stopped. "I'm sorry." I shook my head. So that broken, oppressive home felt like it was from another century. If it weren't for the occasional calls demanding money, I would have forgotten them completely. "You're in New York?" "Mom, I found an internship here." I was lying. In reality, I was still writing novels. My increasingly stable income made me believe that I could still live well even after leaving Julian. What internship? I hear the rent and salaries are high in New York. If you can make it there, see if you can bring your brother over and find him a job. Before, this would have infuriated me. Now, it just felt helpless and ridiculous. I lied smoothly. Mom, I'm sharing a room the size of Kevin's with 2 classmates. There's really no space. My mom spat. Now that you're out of school, you have time to make money, right? From now on, send $5,000 home every month. If you don't, you'd better come back and get married before you get too old and no one will pay a good price for you. I hung up, my face cold. Before I could put my phone away, I received a news alert. The patriarch of the Wilson family was gravely ill. The Wilson brothers were at war, locked in a bitter internal struggle. My heart leaped, and I clicked on the article. A family with $100 billion fortune had a complex power structure and diverse business interests. And I had known from the beginning. Julian's father had more than one woman, and more than one son. The New York tabloids loved to publish all sorts of gossip. The less reputable ones wrote with relish about the stories of the family's first wife all the way to the 7th consort. Against this backdrop of turmoil, the peace between us felt strange and illogical. I always felt like something was about to happen. Or rather, what was bound to happen was finally happening. One day, Julian drank a lot. He asked me to pick him up, and he collapsed onto me as soon as he got in the car. His voice was plaintive. "Laura, I'm so tired." I sighed, stroking his perfectly groomed sideburns. In a family like his, for certain news to leak out, it meant it could no longer be contained. No one knew what was really going on inside. Outsiders could only see glimpses of the dramatic changes. After we got home, I went to make him some soup to sober him up. In the study, Julian was on the phone, a little unhinged. "What do you want from me? What can I do to make you happy?" "No, nothing I do will ever make you happy. And since nothing I do will ever make you happy, that means I don't have to listen to you." The next day, I saw online that he was getting engaged to a girl from a politically connected family in D.C. A perfect match, from the same social standing. My phone slipped from my hand and landed silently on the carpet. I had hesitated to leave, repeatedly examining our relationship. One hesitation, one re-examination, and I had come this far. I once heard a talk show about procrastination. The host said that procrastination is essentially a form of fear. Fear of death. Fear of the current state of things ending. I forgot what I was feeling then. I just mechanically picked up my phone, my mind flashing with a single thought. See, this day has finally come. And just then, I got another call from home. I felt like my soul had left my body as I heard myself speak calmly. "What is it?" The woman's sharp cries drilled through the phone and into my ears. "Sorrow, you have to save your brother. Please, save your brother. He lost $60,000 starting a business and took out a high-interest loan behind our backs. The debt collectors are here. They said if we don't pay, they'll chop off your brother's hand. Your father and I can't even save $2,000 a year. What are we going to do?" My mind went blank with a loud buzz. I suddenly remembered. Not long ago, I had calculated it. After writing for 4 years, I had only earned just over $100,000. The money I sent home almost all came from my royalties. "Mom, where am I supposed to get $60,000? My mom couldn't hear my question. She just kept crying. "Please help him, okay? Kevin isn't like he used to be. He was just trying to make a better life for our family when his business failed. Think of something, Sorrow. You're so pretty, can't you think of something? Aren't there a lot of rich people in New York? Just think of something." These were the words a mother was saying to her daughter. I squeezed my eyes shut. I used to think that because my family background was so terrible, even God took pity on me. So even in this kind of relationship, He brought Julian into my life. But now I understood. No matter how good things seemed, it was all a dream I had woven. And now, it was time to wake up. The day Julian's mother came to see me, I had just finished writing a serialized novel. She was draped in emeralds, perfectly preserved, with eyes that resembled Julian's. In the quiet cafe, she looked down at me and got straight to the point. He has enjoyed the privileges of this family, so he must bear its responsibilities. I didn't interfere before because I thought you were both sensible people. Miss Laura. Julian's mother paused. You're not a foolish girl. You should think carefully about what he needs more right now, a fleeting romance, or a marriage that can secure his position. He either gets everything, or he loses everything. I can tell you, this world eats people alive. What can you give him? Your family can only drag him down. Your family's annual income isn't even enough to pay the monthly salary of the chef Julian hired for you. And that brother of yours. She scoffed. When Julian was younger, it was fine for him to play around. You seem like a sensible girl, so you should know what to do at a time like this. The daughter of the Lin family from DC is a very suitable match for him. I was the one who released the news of their engagement. I assume you've heard. Even though I knew my family's situation inside and out, hearing Julian's mother bring it up still left me feeling completely exposed. I said nothing, staring at the pleats in my dress. A woman in her position was no fool. She had different tactics for different women. For the gold diggers, she'd tell them they'd get nothing if they didn't play along. For the proud ones, she'd tell them they were never equals. After a long silence, I said to her, if Julian tells me to leave, I'll leave. She laughed. Think it over carefully. In that moment, a montage of scenes flashed through my mind. My upbringing, my efforts, my time with Julian. It was only now that I realized fate is the most elusive thing of all. The girl who had struggled to read by the faint glow of a streetlight 10 years ago could never have imagined she would be here today. After leaving the cafe, I had originally planned to go feed the pigeons. I boarded a bus aimlessly. The autumn wind blew, and a wave of exhaustion washed over me. When I got off the bus, breadcrumbs in hand, I found I could barely walk. Not far away was the hotel where Julian and I used to stay. I went to the front desk and found out the room was still checked out in his name. I declined housekeeping, took the elevator up, and it was just as bright as the first time, but I felt nothing but numbness. I slept fitfully for the entire afternoon. When my mom's call woke me, the sunset outside was a magnificent spectacle. My brain was still foggy when her sharp voice came through the phone. Sorrow, are you going to get the money or not? My voice was hoarse. Mom, I don't have any money. How can you not have money? If you don't have it, figure something out. If you don't have money in the big city, what are your father and I supposed to do? What about your brother? I heard a commotion on the other end, and my dad snatched the phone from my mom. Let me talk to her. The man's voice was rough. Sorrow, your mother doesn't know how to talk. Dad will talk to you. It wasn't easy for us to raise you. Now it's time for you to repay us. You can't just refuse. I found it funny. My thoughts cleared. Dad, I have a question. Go ahead. Did Kevin really get into debt because of his business? There was a moment of silence on the other end before my dad relented. We're family, so I won't hide it from you. Kevin got into a fight and broke 2 of the other guy's ribs. The other family has connections. They want $60,000 to settle it, otherwise they'll take one of your brother's arms. We're just simple, honest people. My mom started sobbing on the other end. Sorrow, please save your brother, I'm begging you, please. Before I could say anything, my dad spoke again. You wouldn't want us to go to your teacher for the money, would you? Or I could just give your school's address to that family. Even if you've graduated, your college professors can't possibly not be able to find you, right? I could barely hear what they were saying. Time was like a rumbling wheel, changing everything and yet changing nothing. I had always ignored the pain, so when the emotions I had pushed to the corner finally surfaced, they seemed to hit with extraordinary force. I wasn't worried about Mrs. Davis. Mark had moved his parents to the city to take care of them last year. He was doing well in his career and was highly regarded by his superiors. No matter how powerful the family Kevin had offended was, they wouldn't dare cause a scene at his door. But, what about me? Could I hide behind the facade of my current life forever? Could I ever escape? The thought slammed into me. A voice screamed in my head, "Run. Go. Wouldn't it be better to just let everything end here?" Leaving the hotel, I got in a car back to Greenwich. Julian called. "Where were you? Why weren't you home?" "That wasn't my home. Just out for a walk." He paused. "I have to go to D.C. for a business trip." I knew. He was going to Washington to attend Mr. Lynn's 80th birthday. There were connections to be made. His mother had said she would arrange for him to get engaged to Mr. Lynn's granddaughter that day. My breathing grew shallow. Coincidentally, I need to go back home, too. Julian was surprised. "You don't have to go back if you don't want to." "I haven't been back in years, it's not right. I also need to transfer my residency here, so I need to get some documents." Neither Julian nor I ate much that evening, so Mrs. Rosa didn't make many dishes. I had no appetite, and neither did he. After dinner, we lay on the sofa and watched a movie. Neither of us knew what it was about. I looked at Julian. He was still the same as when we first met, distinguished, refined, and beautiful. On a whim, I said, "You gave me a ring so long ago. Do you think we'll ever get married?" Julian's body tensed, his gaze on me deepening. After what felt like an eternity, just when I thought he wouldn't answer, Julian's voice came out strained. "Laura, I can't give you an answer right now." At that moment, I thought that sentence was the most graceful end. He was just gently telling me that there was no future for us. And in my heart, I already knew that. Actually, I had never told Julian about my family. Having someone you love gives you a weakness. It was better for him not to know the ugly parts. I was terrified that the respectable facade I had maintained for so many years would be ripped away by them. It was better if he only remembered me as a poor but hard-working girl who had grown into herself with his care. "Still, Laura?" The woman's voice was calm. "Not going to change your name?" "No need. Laura is fine. The person who gave me this name was my savior. I'm already dead. What difference does a name make? There are so many Lauras in the world, he won't go looking for every single one. Besides, my name was Sorrow. Keep this card." Julian's mother said, "It's enough for you to live comfortably for the rest of your life. Don't blame me. Blame your bad luck in the birth lottery." She must have said the same thing to her husband's many other women. That day, a car plunged off a cliff on the way to a small town outside Miami. The vehicle exploded on impact. They said a young girl burned to death inside. The nearby villages all mourned the tragedy. Later, a well-dressed man came, asking everyone he met if they had seen the girl in the photo. He asked for a long time. When he couldn't find any other answers, he went mad, his eyes red. In the end, he collapsed from exhaustion and was carried away. This was my plan. And it was the deal I made with his mother. If I was going to leave, I would leave completely. So completely that I no longer existed in this world. The only way to escape my family was for either them to die or for me to die. Since it had come to this, I might as well satisfy everyone. After I left, my new phone received a text from an unknown number. "Your parents came to the police station making a scene." It was bizarre. But I had someone pretend to be your teacher and gave them $90,000. Consider it your filial duty fulfilled. They seemed satisfied. I gave a bitter smile and didn't reply. By then, I had already settled in a remote town on the coast. Not far from the city center here. And very close to where Mrs. Davis lived. I saw her once from a distance but didn't dare approach. I holed up in this small town for 3 months, changed my pen name completely, and spent my days writing stories and feeling the sea breeze. In the second month, I started writing the years with you. In the third month, I suddenly realized that my period hadn't come since I left New York. I was pregnant. Time flew by. Julian and I were at a standoff. I pushed him away and took a step back. So what if it's based on us? I never finished that story, and we don't have an ending. Julian's Adam's apple bobbed. The light made the redness in his eyes more pronounced. I never planned to marry anyone else. But back then, I wasn't in a position to decide to marry you. There was too much going on with my family. If I didn't handle it well, you would have been in danger too. That engagement, I was just in DC for business. They tried to bring it up at the dinner, but I shut it down. Drank 2 pounds of baijiu to do it. That family has pride, so the matter was dropped. When I told you I couldn't give you an answer, it was because I couldn't guarantee my own future, let alone ours. It wasn't because I didn't want to. Ask me again now, okay? I can guarantee it now. My eyes stung with unshed tears. Julian pulled me into his arms. He tilted my chin up, his kiss heavy and tender, like a sigh. I can protect you now. I can give you an answer now. Laura, I wanted to propose the day I gave you that ring. Now, all I'm asking is for you to ask me again. Julian had a business trip to DC. He asked if I wanted to go. No, Mark's ears perked up. He ran over. DC? Uncle, I want to go to Universal Studios. Julian glanced at me and smiled. You're not going? I choked on my words, silent. That day, I didn't give Julian an answer. To pull myself out of one way of life and into another required careful consideration. Mark was only 5, but he wasn't obsessed with Transformers. He was obsessed with Harry Potter. Universal Studios was packed. Julian didn't want to hire a guide, so he just brought his assistant, Mr. Lewis. He leaned over and asked me, Mark likes Harry Potter. What do you like? I like Transformers. You're a girl and you like Transformers? Is that sexist? No, just a little surprising. I didn't tell him that the first movie I ever saw in a theater was Transformers. I couldn't describe the shock of it back then. The 3D glasses were crude and clumsy compared to today's, but I had never seen anything like it. The world just seemed so full of wonder and amazement. We wandered over to the Decepticon coaster. Mark's eyes were full of longing. Julian knelt down to hug him. Little guys can't ride this one. Mark was disappointed. I was too scared to ride it, too. After having Mark, I became very protective of my life. The thrilling rides I used to love would probably terrify me now. But Julian was watching me, and a strange competitive urge flared up. Let's go. I was launched into the air. Those were the longest 3 minutes of my life. My brain felt like it had been scrambled. When I got off, my face was white. Julian looked at my hand gripping his tightly and couldn't help but laugh. Holding on that tight? Anyone would think you can't live without me. Before I could recover, he leaned in and kissed me. You. Julian's eyes crinkled in triumph. You looked so pitiful. Just a little comfort. Mr. Lewis and Mark, one big and one small, stared at us with blank expressions. My face instantly turned red. Mark drew out his words. You guys are too much. For shame. Julian let out a low laugh. Mark played all day and fell asleep early. Julian had booked a business suite. There were only 2 bedrooms. Mark, the big boy, got one. Mark seemed to have become independent very early. At 4, he was already telling his preschool friends that he didn't sleep with his mom anymore. I still remember the first night he slept in his own bed. I suddenly felt the sadness of an old mother who was no longer needed. I stared at the king-sized bed in the master bedroom. You did this on purpose. I did. I'm going to go sleep with Mark. Julian grabbed my hand, his almond eyes full of deep affection. Someone needs you more than Mark does. It was a clear night in DC. The moon was full and bright. The atmosphere was just right, and somehow, one thing led to another. Afterward, we lay in bed. I was writing about us. Julian, who was wiping my fingers, paused. I grew up in a family that favored sons. My parents both adored my brother, even though he just played games all day, ballooned to 200 pounds, couldn't get into college, got into online debt, and assaulted people. They still loved him. I was just responsible for cleaning up his messes. I closed my eyes and said softly, I was just the fuel for my brother's growth. Julian stopped and denied it. You're not. You're my love. Your mother came to see me. I know. Julian put the towel down and lay back beside me. Our family, we don't have the struggles of not being able to afford food like normal families, but we also don't have the simple joys of a happy family. Everyone in this family has been fighting their whole lives. They're all used to playing games. And what's the essence of the game? To make the other person lose, to make them do what you want. My mother is the same. My father played games with her, and she couldn't win. Then she played games with those other women, and she won. Then she wanted to defeat their sons, and marriage was the weapon she prepared for me. In the end, I won without using what she prepared. She had no one left to play against, so she wanted to play against me. She doesn't love me that much, and she doesn't care about me that much. Julian paused. But the child is mine. I just don't want to be like my father. I only have you. I turned my head to look at him. Then can you always have only me? I didn't say the last part, but Julian understood. I can. I can. Aside from the first day at Universal Studios, Julian was in meetings for 7 straight days. At first, I kept Mark company, but I could tell that after all these years without a father, he was really hoping Julian could be there with him too. That night, Mark lay with his head on my lap. When are we going home? I was typing, not even looking up. Ask your daddy. The moment the words left my mouth, both of them, big and small, froze. I didn't realize at first. What are you looking at me for? A bubble of snot formed on Mark's nose. Mommy, is he really my? Julian, however, was ecstatic. He scooped Mark up. Call me Daddy. Mark shouted it loud and clear. Daddy. My eyes welled up. Seeing Julian smile like that, I realized he had wrinkles around his eyes. He was 35, and I was 30. So be it. We weren't young anymore. After returning to New York, Julian got busy again. I started outlining a new book. Although my previous books were commercial products, they had brought me a considerable income. At least Mark and I never wanted for anything. When I talked about it with my editor, she just smiled and said, writing that's just good enough attracts readers. Writing that's too good attracts competitors. You're always unhappy with your work, but you're already doing great. Only later did I understand that there's no such thing as writing well or poorly. The ability to attract readers is a skill in itself. If they keep reading, there's always a part they like or a part that resonates with them. Isn't the creative process just a journey of building worlds and finding resonance, over and over again? I was watering the flowers on the terrace. An unexpected visitor appeared at the gate, but I was surprised that Julian had instructed the guards to stop her. 5 years had passed since we last met. I could still only describe her as dripping with jewels. But she looked much more haggard than before. I went downstairs, dismissed the guards, and smiled at her. Mrs. Wilson, please come in. She saw me, smoothed her hair, and entered the villa with her head held high. I offered her a cup of herbal tea. She didn't take it. I didn't insist, just placed it on the table in front of her. She surveyed the room and asked, "Where's Mark?" "He's not here." Mark wanted to learn piano. In our old town, there were no suitable teachers, so I had been teaching him myself using online videos. Now that he had the chance, he brought it up again. Julian bought him the best piano and found him the best teacher. He was starting kindergarten soon and needed to get used to the life here and make some friends. Going to a piano class was a good idea. Mrs. Rosa is out shopping. The guards and housekeepers are in the yard. It's just me here right now. Only then did she speak again. What do you have that's better than General Lin's granddaughter? Your face, your personality, or what? I arranged so many meetings for him, and he slapped me in the face every time, refusing to go. There was a shortcut, but he insisted on taking years, ruining his health. He says I'm playing a game with him, but isn't he just defying me for the sake of it? I took a deep breath and said softly, but if it weren't for you, he wouldn't be in the position he is today. He's in this position not because he wants to be, but because he doesn't want to play games with his own mother. What do you know? Mrs. Wilson's expression was cold. What is love? Romantic entanglements that sap a hero's will. Foolish. I will not give you my blessing. I had thought that by now, Mrs. Wilson wouldn't be the same. But I had underestimated her competitive spirit. The next day, after picking Mark up from his class, I drove to Julian's company to wait for him for dinner. As I pulled up, an elderly couple and a young man, now half his former size, rushed out from the side. The bodyguards reacted quickly, but my heart froze when I saw the three of them. Tui. My mother spat at me. Having a baby behind our backs, living the high life out here. Shameless bitch. Mark was startled. Mommy. I snapped back to reality and immediately signaled for the guards to take Mark away. My mother was still screaming. You even lied and told us you were dead. You don't care if we live or die. You don't care about your old parents. So ungrateful. So ungrateful. How did our family end up with a useless girl like you? Kevin pretended to hold my mother back while talking to me. Sister, do you know how sad Mom and Dad were when they thought you were dead? How could you lie to us? You're alive and well, how could you pretend to be dead? If I didn't lie, I said, tilting my head up, should I have just waited for you to suck me dry? The guards held them back, so they couldn't get close to me. My mother sat on the ground and started to throw a tantrum. I can't go on. Oh, I just can't go on. We raised her from nothing, brought her all the way from a small town to the big city, and she turns around, latches onto a rich man, and lies to us that she's dead. She doesn't want to take care of us. She doesn't want to support us in our old age. My brother's acting was superb. He was now weeping dramatically. Dad, Mom, don't cry. If sister won't take care of you, you still have me, right? Even though I gave up my chance to study for her, I have my own two hands now. I can work, I'll support you. A crowd had gathered, and people started pointing and whispering. She's so rich but doesn't take care of her family. Look at what she's wearing, and then look at her family. Oh my. I took a deep breath, about to say something, when I saw a car parked not far away. Julian's mother, wearing sunglasses, was watching the show from a distance. Suddenly, someone in the crowd threw an egg. It was summer, but I felt a chill run through me. The broken egg dripped down my skin, its sticky feeling a reminder of something I could never escape. Just like my family. What right do you have? What right do you have to say these things? I snatched the megaphone from a security guard who was trying to maintain order. Who the hell threw that egg? You just listened to one side of the story, is that it? Why don't you look at how they treated me to raise their son? From childhood, my brother had good clothes and good food, while my hands were covered in frostbite. He could go to school whenever he wanted, but I had to beg to go to high school. When I got to college, I had to work to support their son. If I couldn't, I was supposed to go home and get married, because I'd be too old to command a good price. When I didn't give them money, they threatened to go to my benefactor. They even asked me if I could sell myself to raise money for their son's compensation. Am I not taking care of my family? Have I not taken care of them? I held the megaphone, my words tumbling out incoherently. What right do you have to throw things at me? You. An overwhelming sense of injustice washed over me. I wanted to say more, but I was pulled forcefully into an embrace. Julian? Isn't that Julian Wilson? Under Julian's forceful intervention, they were taken to the police station. Kevin had an episode, and that's when I learned he was addicted to drugs. He had sold the house back home and forced my parents to go out and work, merely pushing them to sell a kidney or their blood. This was the good son who was supposed to carry on their family line. At the same time, a video of the incident at Julian's building was posted online and maliciously amplified. The video only showed the first half, not the second. Everyone believed I had stolen my brother's chance at an education and was ignoring my elderly parents while living a life of luxury. For a time, Julian's name was trending on every platform. This saga of a wealthy family mixed with a morality play was quite a spectacle. Netizens commented that they had never seen anything like it. My personal information was also leaked. I sighed and first called Mrs. Davis. Laura. Mom, I'm sorry I lied to you. It's okay, it's okay. On the other end, Mrs. Davis was sobbing. As long as you're alive, that's all that matters. As long as you're alive, Mom understands. Mark took the phone. Laura, it's okay. As long as you're alive, we saw the news online. Don't worry, we can help you. At first, I didn't know how they could help. But half a day later, I found out. Mrs. Davis had written a letter by hand, and Mark posted it online. The letter chronicled her memories of me, the things we had been through together. It wasn't just her. Many of my teachers and classmates from middle school also came forward. All because I had left such a deep impression on them. My grades were too good, my living conditions were too poor, and my diligence was unforgettable. I looked at Mrs. Davis's handwriting and cried several times. I took a deep breath and told myself that I had to be brave, too. Using my author account, I wrote out my entire life story. At the end, I wrote, "Does a girl really have to die to escape her family? I don't want to be Sorrow. I don't want to be the girl named Welcome Brother, Hope for a Boy, or Worthless. I don't want to be a tool for someone's wish for a son, nor do I want to be the fuel for someone else's growth. I just want to be myself. And I want to deserve happiness, too." After the post went up, many were shocked to learn that this author was Julian's wife and that she had such a legendary story. One reader remembered the book I never finished. "The Years with You is about the author and Julian, isn't it? Will you ever finish it?" I replied, yes. Some were still skeptical. Talks about fighting to escape her family? In the end, she still relied on a man. Julian, who was clearly online 24/7, replied quickly, "She would have been just fine on her own without me. We are together simply because we love each other. And yes, now we have a child." Someone else posted the photo from our day at Universal Studios. "I took this picture because I thought they were a super good-looking and perfect family. I can't believe I stumbled into the middle of a huge gossip story, I'm shook. But, she looks so happy now. You really can't tell she went through so much hardship before. I guess it's a happy ending after all." I opened the photo. In it, a woman was smiling gently, a little boy hugging her leg playfully. A man stood to the side, his eyes filled with a smile as he watched them. A comment below read, "Love makes us whole. Those who believe, receive love. Perhaps fate is fair after all." Because I believed, I was lucky. After the storm passed, Mrs. Rosa was making wontons for me and Mark. Mark adored Mrs. Rosa's cooking, having once said it was as good as his preschool's cafeteria food. I wanted to learn too. As Mrs. Rosa folded the dough, she said, "You know, Mr. Wilson knew you were alive for a long time. And when you were giving birth, he was waiting right outside the delivery room." I froze, my hands stopping completely. I wasn't surprised he could find out I was alive, but that he was there at the hospital? "What did you say?" Mrs. Rosa gave me a look that said, "I bet you didn't expect that." Forget Mr. Wilson, I was secretly watching over the young master for years myself. That's when I learned everything. Back then, Julian's grandfather was critically ill. The brothers were locked in a fierce internal battle. Julian couldn't resolve it all at once. When he found out I was alive, his excitement lasted only a moment before he was plunged back into endless anxiety and work. Going to find you would have only put you and the child in danger. It was better to have someone watch over you until everything settled down. Mrs. Rosa's voice was calm and steady. The day you gave birth, he created a decoy, making it seem like he was in his office all day. He took only Mr. Lewis, boarded a ferry, and then rented a car. When he came back, his clothes were all wrinkled. I'd never seen him like that, so disheveled and yet so ecstatic. He told me, "Mrs. Rosa, I have a son. I thought he had gone to see you, that he was going to bring you back." But he just shook his head. He devoured a bowl of porridge, and before he went upstairs to clean up, he stood at the bottom of the stairs and said, "I have to clear the snow from my own doorstep before I can be worthy of the one I love." I suddenly thought, I had never seen it snow in New York. There was one time it looked like snow, but it turned into a drizzle as it hit the ground. For the past few years, I've been living just 2 streets away from you. I was even a cook at Mark's preschool cafeteria. I was stunned again. You mean? Do you remember when Mark had that stomach flu? The people Mr. Wilson hired to protect you reported back that Mark was sick and you had taken him to the hospital in the middle of the night. I remembered that day. I later found out there was an issue with the preschool's cafeteria. Many of the kids who ate there that day got food poisoning. It was the first time Mark had been that sick. His little face was so pale, and I was terrified. Later, the parents signed a petition. The preschool found a scapegoat and changed their food vendor. After the new vendor took over, all the parents went to taste the food. The principal was beaming, assuring everyone that the food would be of this quality from now on, and the crisis finally ended. But I never imagined. The new cafeteria vendor was Julian, with Mrs. Rosa. No wonder Mark always said the cafeteria food was so delicious, and that Mrs. Rosa's cooking was just as good as his preschool's. My eyes welled up, and I lowered my head. Mrs. Rosa continued folding the wontons, her voice gentle. I've never had children of my own. You two must live a happy life together. Kevin was sent to a rehab center. My parents slunk back to our hometown. I didn't ask Julian for help, I hired my own lawyer. The lawyer's professionalism and firmness made it clear to them that the most they would ever get from me was a few thousand a month in alimony. Nothing more. The Years with You, which had been on hiatus for a long time, resumed its updates that fall. Mark started kindergarten. I was worried he wouldn't adapt to the new environment, but his cheerful personality quickly put my fears to rest. After my talk with Mrs. Rosa, I went to pick Mark up from school. Halfway home, I suddenly turned the car around and headed toward Julian's company. I just suddenly wanted to see him. I sent him a text and parked in the underground garage. Julian came down quickly. He was still in a handmade black suit, tall and elegant, with that transcendent air about him. The flutter I felt when I first saw him, I think I still felt it now. He walked quickly, opened the car door, and saw a bouquet of flowers on the back seat. Mark yelled from the side, "Daddy!" surprise. He froze for a second, then looked at me in the driver's seat and suddenly smiled. Miss Laura, quite the romantic. I shrugged. So. I glanced at Mark, then decisively closed the back door, got out, and sat in the passenger seat. You drive. I want to sit up front. He had just buckled his seatbelt when I unbuckled mine and threw my arms around him. It was an awkward position, and Julian didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He squeezed my waist and whispered, "Mark's watching. We can hug later." My voice was thick with tears. I want to get married. Julian paused. Stealing my line? I looked at him. Let's go get the license tomorrow. Julian frowned. No. I need to have a master pick an auspicious date. Pick what? I looked into his eyes. Destiny already gave me a winning hand.